Hello, dreamers and thinkers, and welcome back to another episode of Undone. On today's episode, I have a special guest. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. So, to introduce myself, my name is Michelle, also known as Radical Premiers for my business. Um, I am an event curator, I'm an event
Yes.
producer. I consider myself to be a member of the artistic and creative community, specifically in the African diaspora.
I love
But
that.
I'm also, thank you, but I'm also very passionate about psychology and politics. That's my academic background. And when I'm not doing those things, I work with young people in the resi system. So yeah.
I just realized we have a lot of crossovers. I think we knew this the first time we met, but I'm like, dang, we really do have a lot of crossovers. I love it
No,
for us.
we really do.
Also, I'd like to point out how we met was like the most random thing ever.
Very, very random. What was it? Basically family, right? That's how we met, through
But it's
family.
like I'm not even actually related.
That's true.
It's
There's actually no blood relation
that
here.
I have no blood relation. That's just my fam. And my auntie happens to be her actual auntie.
That's my actual auntie.
And she's just my auntie by like, she's my best friend's auntie. So that's my auntie. Like,
That's your auntie. That's family right
and that's how
there.
we met. And
That's how
yeah,
we met. And we have so many mutual connections. We know so
it's
many
crazy.
similar people. And like that just makes sense because you're a dope person. I believe I'm a dope person.
I
So
was
we
gonna
hang in
say, I
dope
was like, you're a
circles,
dope person. So it makes sense. The math is mathing.
Exactly, exactly. Sort of overlap there, which is dope.
I
Yeah.
love it. Okay, so to get us started, we are going to
Mhm.
do unpopular opinions. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I will go first since I have two, so we can sort of sandwich it. Uh,
Go. You can share both or you can share one, whatever floats your boat. I'm
All
excited.
right. So I'll start with one. This one's a little less salacious. The second one's a little naughty,
I
but I'll
love
start with this first one. My unpopular opinion is that receiving gifts as a love language, it's a terrible love language. It's just
that.
well packaged greed.
Oh my God.
And I'm sorry, but that's the tea and that's the truth. Because the more you unpack it, it really just comes down to I put value and worth in physical material
In
things that aren't necessarily critical to what the relationship is defined by. And then if your relationship is defined by that, I feel like that's something you have to unpack.
you've blown my mind. I've never thought about it. Like you're saying it and I'm like, yeah, duh.
Mhm.
But like I've never questioned it. I've never thought about it. I've just been like, yeah, sure, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But some people like gifts.
If that's what you like, that's what you like.
Whoa. Okay, I like that one. I like that
Yeah.
one. I'm gonna be sharing
Mm.
that one. All week I'm gonna be like, guys, have you ever thought about how
Have you ever thought about how physical gifts are just materialistic greed?
right?
No?
Like, why do
Okay.
we consider that a love language? No, I love that one.
Mm.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. Along the same. Wait, no. Okay, actually, no. This is along the same level of like, except probably me leaning into my shallowness. I
No,
once
let's
did a
hear it.
poll. I once did a poll of this on my close friends. A lot of my unpopular opinions slash some of the like podcast topics have come from like debates I've started on my close friends.
As they should. That is the, I feel like if you're in someone's close friends list, why are you there if you don't feel confident enough to reply? Because they're not going to
Right.
remove you. You're not making it a space to encourage discourse.
That's what I'm saying. And I do not use my close friends for anything. Like I am not like that. You could consider me boring if you're coming to my close friends for anything scandalous. Like all I do is just
Yep, you're
yap
not
yap
going to
yap
find
yap.
anything scandalous. Yeah. No, 100% relatable. I totally understand. You're not going to see me shaking hands at the club, but you may find a very like niche critique on a topic that no one's talking
Right.
about.
Just because I needed to share it. I needed it out in the world and that was it. This is where I chose.
Exactly, this is what I chose.
So this one I had started and it was like, okay, so the unpopular opinion is I would want to be the pretty one in the relationship. But at the time when I shared it, some people are like, no, why would I want that? I want my partner to be like the really good looking one. I'm like, but no, why? I was like, think about it in context. I was like, no, no,
No,
guy,
why?
no.
That's an
That's just
interesting
a very
one.
shallow one. Yeah. Like, I don't want you to
I
look
like it.
scary, but like, I would
You
like,
don't look like a bad man or anything, but like,
I would just like to be the easier on the eyes in comparison to you.
no, I respect that. I respect that.
Okay, so this one's a bit different. I think by the time this episode's coming out, the
Mhm.
previous ones I have done are all interviews about people's stories.
Oh, okay.
Whereas this one's
Hmm.
exciting. I got Michelle on because, first of all, with everything that's happening, what sparked the idea was everything that's happening presently with like
Hmm.
Israel and Palestine and the discourse of that on social
Yeah.
media that I've been seeing. And
Mm.
then I like it made me think of everything that happened in like I think it was 20 I forget when it was 2020 with everything with like
2020,
Black Lives
yeah.
Matter
2020,
and everyone
2021.
yeah and everyone talking about like the whole movement, everything that was going on, the discourse that was going on then. And then I think for me my stance on social media activism has like evolved over time. And I was like,
Mm.
I would really love to have a conversation with someone about this. Like, is there no one else thinking about this? Like,
Someone else like deeping it.
and shout out to my close friends again. I put it on there, and Michelle was like, hello. I said, period, come through.
I said, me, I want to talk about it.
Right. And so here we are. So I guess my first question, actually, I also did a lot of research on this like prior, not a some research. I won't say a lot. I did
Mhm.
some research on this, and a lot of the articles were actually saying that like it was a noticeable shift from everything that happened with Black Lives Matter in 2020 in
Mhm.
how people engaged with social media activism because I don't think it had been as prolific prior to then. So my question for you is why do you think 2020 was such a like turning point for social media activism?
My first answer, the first thing that comes to my head is thinking of COVID. I think COVID definitely put things into perspective for a lot of people, especially, the a lot of people being cooped up in their homes, having more time to be on their phones, specifically if we're looking at the shift of social media activism, right? Um, because a lot of the things that even now people are talking about online, they're ongoing things that have been happening for years, for centuries. But
Right.
the truth, yeah, like they're conversations that people have been having for time. Even, you look at the case of George Floyd that really sparked Black Lives Matter and, a lot of protests and movements. People have been, you know, cops have been doing things like that since the 80s, since the 70s, since the 60s, you
Yeah.
name it. Since before slavery, police have always been bad people. You can go back to ancient times. Cops are not your friend.
Yeah.
They protect the state. And I think just social media and being in our homes and having more time on our phones and less time interacting with people, we were so inundated with the negatives of life and the negatives of our modern society. And I think it forced a lot of people to sort of reckon with, at least in my opinion, reckon with what it actually takes for Western society to look the way it is. Like Western society is
Mm,
not just made up this way because there are some really good politicians who like
yeah.
want the people in the West to live these great lives. There are so many structures and systems, whether they're corrupt or not, in place to shield us from specific and certain things. Because
Yeah.
civil unrest it's not popular. It's not good for the to keep the
Just
wheels moving in
yeah,
society. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So I think that
And
was the shift. Mm.
I think I'd have to agree. I think for the first time everyone was a lot more connected online than they were in
Oh,
person because that
100%.
was the only medium that you had.
Mm.
And so now it's like, oh, you're more tapped into everything that's happening everywhere and what's going on. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, it really does feel like it was a timing thing. Like it was
Mm.
a lot of things were intersecting at that time. And then it was kind of just like, oh, this is where we are.
This is
Um,
where we are. Yeah.
right. How have you seen, do you think you've seen it evolve in the last like 3 years?
Evolution of social media activism in general, or just
Mm,
like. Okay, social media.
Oh, social media activism, yeah.
Oh, evolve. I wouldn't know how to necessarily like conceptualize like what the evolution of social media activism looks like. But what I think is it's become a lot more surface level and superficial, I think.
I think it
And that
started
could
with
be an
those black squares. I
it's
think it started with the black squares.
no, and that's the thing. We really thought we were doing something. And that's like the trick of social media activism. I think the evolution has
Yes.
actually been a lot more sinister than we want to think it has because we think that reach means change and reach means awareness. But I think
Yes.
like you look at how corporations have been able to profit off this social media activism insanely,
Oh, for
like
sure.
I've seen pictures of, for example, just like US military planes with pride flags on them or with like Black Lives Matter flags on them. And you're thinking, with the intention of what social media activism was about, was that the direction we wanted to go in, where you're sensationalizing these specific issues that certain groups of people are facing to the point where it's just kind of like it's a blockbuster, it's how can we make money off of this because a lot of people are talking about it.
When
And the
you
Black
say
Squares is
that,
a great example.
I am remembering also on top of it was the black squares, and then one that I was like, oh, I think I like it. I don't really think I do. Was when oh my God, actually, no, now that I think about it, no, I don't like it. We should have thrown that idea in the bin. When white celebrities or social media influencers with big platforms would give
Mhm.
their Instagram pages to black like celebrities who are maybe lesser known or like and they would swap Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
I was like, what? I want
Mm,
what are we doing
I
really?
so I have so many critiques and so many questions about that. The main one is really that I always come back to, and it kind of concerns these topics, is always the social media activism really puts people as monoliths. It kind of makes this assumption that
Yes.
it sounds so stupid and basic. It makes the assumption that all Black people are thinking the same about this issue, all white people are thinking the same about this issue, or it doesn't matter
Yeah.
like the specific group you're talking about, because unfortunately, social media doesn't allow for a lot of nuance and critical thinking because
Yeah.
a lot of the people who are deeply engaged in social media, they're not the truth. I don't think they're thinking about critical thinking and nuance. And that's not like
No,
a dig at people who use social media. It's just those
what
type
it
of people,
is.
you're gonna find them in different spaces, and it's not gonna
Yeah.
be it. But it kind of low key is. Like,
It's just
I mean,
what
that's
it
a different
is.
conversation around like just social media use in general. Like, put the phone down,
Oh no. Oh no, I felt that one. I felt that one. Oh, what was I gonna say when you're speaking that I was like, oh, I love. I
In
remember
real.
no, one of my friends said that like the thing with social media is that it gives like megaphones to like specific people on complete like on
Yeah.
who stand but I don't know if I'd say firmly. But people get
Mm,
megaphones with social media and then it looks like everyone is thinking like that or everyone is like
yeah.
everyone views this topic the same way. And it's like, no, but when you get down to it and you're like at dinner parties or you're at a bar and you start having these conversations, you realize that there's a lot of nuance and people,
Hmm.
it's not how it's presented on social media. It's just that the people with the megaphones are the ones getting on social media and saying
Yep.
the most and speaking on behalf of a group of people. And it's like,
Oh, 100%. And it's
shut
always the
up.
people who are so far on the pendulum, they're just like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say their view is extreme. It's just they're surrounded by so many people who, or at least on social media, who think what they think. So their views become more and more ingrained, or like their beliefs become stronger. Which I would say, like you said, firm, they become firm in it. And then there's no room for, a centrist or moderate view. And the truth is that most people are centrist and most people are moderate. That's just the truth.
Exactly. But it's like
Yeah.
this thing of like, people get stuck in echo chambers. And
Mm,
then it's like, okay. And I think that's part of my problem with social media. Part of my problem with social media activism, I do think there is a positive side, but I think
mhm.
it's like nine times out of 10, the people who follow you you have some sort of connection point, whether you know them in real life or they like the kind of like content and stuff that you post.
Mm,
And so it's like most of the people who follow you probably think and believe the same things that you do because you probably
exactly.
found each other in similar circles. There's a similar
Mm.
vibe, there's a whole like thing going on. And so then it's like, who are you
Who,
activising to? Like,
who are you
I'm
activizing
with you,
to?
girl.
Who is the audience? No, and that's the truth. That's the truth of it because and this is why social media, this is the part where people have forgotten. These people who have created social media, they're very smart. They know what they're doing.
Right.
Those likes you receive on your story and your post that reaffirm what you've just posted and your opinion on a particular issue are so powerful. It has you believing, wow, everyone must think this way because I got 13 likes on this story post.
I
And
got
that's
13 likes. I ate. It's giving deep. It's giving critical
the,
thinking and woke.
And it's like, of course they liked it because exactly what you're saying. They're people who you probably met in similar spaces and in similar circles. But the truth is, oh, real life is just not that way. And
No.
social media is very diluting. This was something because I have a politics and international relations background, which I studied at when I was living in Melbourne, at
Yeah.
Melbourne Uni. And one of like that one class that you remember, like, wow, this really stuck with
Yeah.
me forever. This one class I had a tutor that said the medium is the message. And there's like a lot of theory around this, sort of like how we look
Mm,
at the establishments of like modern day TV and how it really shapes people's thinking. And essentially what the lesson was, it's not really about what you're posting on social media. It's about what the effect that social media has in your life. Like it's not
yeah.
about the social issue that you're posting. It's about the fact that you're on social media. You're using that phone, you're giving in to exactly what Instagram wants by just spending those hours on there. Instagram doesn't care about the particular issue you're talking about. They just want to know that you're getting engagement because you're using it.
Yeah. They're just
And
trying to run
yeah,
their money up.
no,
And I like
exactly.
that. I'm
So,
going to sit with that one.
yeah, so with that, just do look good. The medium's the message. Let's see what you're
Yeah.
talking about. It's
I
very
think
interesting.
I always think of it with, I can't even remember where I heard this or what it was, but it's like I think it was in history class in high school, actually, now that I think
Mm,
about it. And we're learning about like pop culture and stuff. And I remember thinking, why is this relevant? But it was
mm,
like the connection was that like people have always used pop culture as like a vessel for whatever their message is. And so like
mm,
I think I have always mostly identified that with like music, like the music of a
mm.
certain time and an era. Like I think Bob Marley's music is probably a really great example of that. And like certain parts where you're like,
Mm.
oh, like there's a real message. Like you can hear what the issues and stuff were that like he was
Yeah.
saying at the time. But I had not put it in the context of like, yeah, social media is like medium and
No, that's it. That's so true.
it's giving
And that's
plastic.
it's giving plastic. It's giving fake. I would say it,
Mm,
but no, that's true. I think Bob Marley's music is a really good example of using the medium of music to whether it's connect or control or like lead people into a specific direction of like what you're trying to, talk about,
yeah.
discuss. Yeah.
Um, So on that, do you think everyone should use their platform to speak on social issues? Because you know how celebrities be getting cancelled. So I'm like, you have 10 million followers and you haven't said a thing.
I think this was one of the things we messaged about, and I was very clear. I was like, no, actually, I think a lot of people don't need to say anything. I think it's very okay to be quiet.
To just shut
Um,
up.
yeah, literally, like, just shut up. Like, do I think everyone should speak on social media, about specific topics? I really don't think so, but it doesn't mean that people shouldn't be allowed to speak. I just think that it does more damage for people who don't know what they're talking about to be very vocal about specific things that
Yeah,
very much impact people's real and everyday lives. And the problem with social media activism is that, yes, we see visually the atrocities that are happening, but at the same time, we are still so far removed
yeah,
from the topic. And yeah, like with celebrities, like, okay, this is where I feel like we get into a real deep dive. Okay, using the example of
okay,
Justin Bieber, right?
yeah,
Justin Bieber posting about Israel and saying, pray for Israel. And unfortunately, he uses an image backdrop of Gaza. So he doesn't really know what he's talking about, whether, or
yeah,
maybe he does. And I think even in how many followers does he have? Probably like what, millions. Already without him even being intentional about it, or just through that simple lack of research that he easily could have Googled. Because I don't know what it is with celebrities, but for some reason they don't Google things. Like it's so much easier to ask their followers instead of like
I
you have
never
all the resources in the
understand.
world.
I'm like, you have an entire team. How
A
did
whole
this
team.
statement or whatever get released and no
Mm,
one like, huh? What
yeah,
do you pay people to do? If not, and
exactly.
if it has nothing to do with you caring about the issue, at least protect your image. Because now I'm
At
looking at you, I'm
least
like an idiot.
that's what I'm thinking. Protect your image. Be a superstar. Be a pop star. And now, unfortunately, a lot of his followers that will see that post with a misleading image are going. That's the image they now have of the conflict and of the situation in their head, which is millions of people who are going to share that information with their friends or their family, and that is the spread of misinformation because they're
Yeah,
not necessarily uninformed. Like they're informed of the situation, but they don't have the right details, they don't have the right facts, and
yeah.
that is so much more harmful than ignorance. Like the truth
I
is
was about to
ignorance
say,
is
yeah,
so bliss.
yeah. And that,
Yeah,
honestly, in situations like that, it's like I'd rather you were ignorant than just be so strongly protesting the
exactly.
wrong information. Like,
Hmm.
come on now.
Come on
Um,
now.
do you think, I guess you kind of answered it, that
Mhm.
social media activism isn't as fruitful as it could be? Do you think it is?
No, okay, I'm not all like doom and gloom when it comes to social media activism. I do
I
like
agree.
I do think that I don't think celebrities should be who we look to help us like understand an issue. I think this is just more so
Yeah,
like where I think school systems and maybe the people around like young people have maybe failed them a little bit, like not teaching them. Like you don't have to look to your favorite pop star to like find information on an issue. Like you should be able to do that
yeah,
outside of that area. But then at the same time, like when you have a celebrity, I mean, you can even use Cardi B as an example, right? Whether you agree or disagree with all the things she does, every now and again she'll hop on her platform and she will talk about New York City and their
yeah.
budget and their
Oh,
policies.
that one killed
And
me. She ate with that analysis. I was
and she
like,
ain't with
yes.
it. Because and it's because it's coming from a genuine place of
Yeah.
I actually live in New York City. My kids go to school in New York City. I do business in New York City. I actually know what I'm talking about because this is my city. And I
I
think the
think she has
problem
a
is with
political background, actually. Like, I
I
think
think
at
something around there,
college,
right?
yeah, she did some sort of
Yeah.
polls, and I was like, shout out to
Okay, shout out to you, girl. Like, yeah,
you.
so I think the problem with celebrities using social media activism and why it becomes not fruitful is because they're detached from the issue. They're hopping on a bandwagon just as much as or whether they I mean, I don't know what goes down in Hollywood, like whether they're compelled, they're forced to talk about, the powers
Yeah,
that be. Like, we don't know what happens. But I do think if you're going to social media could activism could be a lot more fruitful if people just talked about the things that they know and the things that are closest, not necessarily closest, but inform their daily lives.
yeah.
Because what I believe makes it not fruitful and not productive is that you now have virtue signalers who will say, you should be talking about this, you should be talking about this, everyone should be posting about this, and start villainizing other people who aren't. But it's to me, it's just such a double standard because, for example, no one's talking about how slavery in Libya is the biggest amount of slavery we've seen since the transatlantic slave trade.
Oh
No one
wow,
talks about that. Yeah. So
wow.
like it's these little things like these atrocities that are happening all over the world. And we technically speaking, we all have access to that
Mm,
information. It's
yeah,
just that at different points in time, that information will be popular because it's trending. So
yeah.
like I just feel like social media activism is so unhelpful for constantly telling people you should be talking about this or like, you should post about this. I just think it's a double standard, it's virtue signaling and there's also I don't really think the world is going to change from posting a black square or like talking to your 300 followers. But that could just be me though. That honestly could just be me. Like someone
That's
could
just my
totally
humble
say you're wrong.
opinion.
That's my opinion. But
What
if
do
you
you
don't
think
agree, it's
about
okay.
the everyday person who, because I have seen a lot more people commenting on I don't want to, I don't like the language around calling it
Mhm.
like, but I don't think it's conflict because that's not what we're seeing. You can't
Mm,
really call it a
you
situation
can't.
because it's more than a situation.
It's definitely more than a
Like,
situation.
I'm like, what's happening in the Middle East? I'm like,
What's been happening in the Middle
what's been
East?
happening? Yes, what's been happening for years. Um, I've seen a lot more people talking about it more recently, just like everyday people. And I think as
Mm,
people are acquiring information and knowledge and their eyes are opening up to it, they feel really passionate about it. And then it's
mm.
like, I think there's this level of frustration of like how, like, I was in the dark for so long and I didn't know until now. And now I think everyone should know and everyone should
Yeah.
post about it. And it's like, it's noble.
Hmm.
It is noble. I understand your frustration, but also everyone has access to the internet. At the
That's
end of the
what I
day,
mean. And oh,
yeah, no,
sorry, go on.
I was gonna say at the end of the day, you can't make people care.
No, facts. You can't.
You
You
cannot
really
make people
cannot.
care. And I think a big part of like social media activism is like half of the battle is making people want to care.
Mm,
And it's like you can't. Like
no, you
people are gonna
can't.
engage with if people care about a topic, they are going to actively seek that out and engage with
Yeah.
that topic. You like
Mm.
bombarding it on your stories or whatever won't make them care any more than they had intended to,
Oh, for sure. No, 100%.
which is a
I
sadness
think there was a question in there somewhere at the beginning. You
that I
said
said.
something. Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
you said regular people,
oh,
something
yes,
about
yes, yes.
everyday
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
Yeah, everyday people posting about this particular topic. How do I feel about that? What do I think about that? I think it is, end of the day, I do think it's always important to talk about geopolitical politics. Like
yes,
just
yes,
generally talking about politics, I'm always going to believe that's important. However, I think a lot of everyday people, at least those who are engaging in social media activism in the Western hemisphere of the world, are coming to terms with a bit of a reckoning, a bit of a
yes.
realization of, and this is going to sound, not nice or maybe too blunt, but a lot of people who are very, live a privileged life don't want to accept like what it actually takes to maintain like I was saying earlier at the start, like the
Yeah.
world in which we live in. And it's very
Mhm.
confronting to see the way, just as the US and Australia as an example, having all this backing towards Israel because Israel's, their little baby, that's their little
Mm.
colonial baby. And
Yeah.
there's allegiance there. Like we're not talking, I support you, bro. Like we're talking billion-dollar deals. These like the
Yeah.
big leagues. And then you have this particular issue where people they live in Australia, they are very lucky to be here, but then at the same time they know deep down their hearts that what is happening is wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't know what the solution is. Like I think people will say, that historically people will say, no, this is the solution. If you've been talking about Palestine for ages, if you've been talking about Israel for ages, you'll know the solution. But I think a lot of people don't actually know what resolution looks like. So it's a bit of
Yeah.
this cognitive dissonance, it's kind of scary because you're like, how is this even happening? Like, how are
Yeah.
we allowing so many people to die? Because of social media, like we're seeing it every day. But there was a time when you didn't see violence happening on that level unless you picked up a
No.
newspaper or turned on
Yeah.
the radio. And now it's like every time you pick up your phone, you're hearing about these stories. And
Yeah.
that is also very unnatural for the human experience in general. I don't think, like, if you want to go on the psychology aspect of it, I don't think it's healthy or
No.
productive for humans to see this type of pain this consistently every day. I just don't think
It's
it's good for our mental.
oh, what do they call it? The official term? Compassion fatigue.
Yeah, compassion
I think yeah,
fatigue.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that they are experiencing that as well. And like the helplessness that comes with the fact that you're just like watching all of this stuff through the news, numbers are being updated to you, like through your screen,
Mm,
whatever. Numbers are being
yeah.
updated, and you're just like, I feel helpless. There's nothing that I can do, but I also feel like responsibility because the country that I live in is like funding this, and in some way or another,
Exactly.
I am essentially funding this. Like,
Just by virtue of being a citizen or being a resident, it's like,
right? Do I commit tax fraud?
yeah.
Like, how do I stick it to the man?
How do I stick it to? No, that's so real. And I was gonna say, like, on the note of compassion fatigue as well. the thing is with our brains, right? Our brains don't know the difference between seeing pain on, I think, video, like when the hormones are released or the chemicals. We don't
Yeah.
know the difference between seeing pain on a video and seeing pain in real life. Because if you're walking down the street and you see someone with a broken leg and they're screaming in pain, you don't just keep walking. Like everything in your humanly, unless you know there's something else going on, your human instinct says, I gotta run to that person, I have to help, because that's what humans do.
Yeah.
And then once you've helped that person, you can like return back to baseline. You're like, oh, situation recovered, you move on with life. But you don't get to do that with social media. You
No.
get to see these kids who are suffering, and you're like, oh, there's nothing I can do now. That feeling stays. It's your brain hasn't actually had the chance to recover from it and process it because
Yeah.
you haven't been able to do anything. And
No.
yeah, that's crazy. That's
A
scary.
bad place to be.
Mm.
Oh, on my ventures on the internet, actually, I think
Mhm.
I found this well, no, I made it a quote. It was some article. And they were talking about how the speed afforded by such protest, like social media activism, is,
Mhm.
however, as much its peril as its promise. In
Oh, wait,
that,
say that again. Sorry.
right? No, you're okay. The speed afforded by such protest is, however, as much its peril as its promise. So,
Oof.
yeah, the idea that like the fact that if you were to start a hashtag today, it could be trending tomorrow about whatever it
Mhm.
is that you're like trying to rally people around, but also that same like wildfire kind of nature that social media activism has to it kind of makes it not sustainable, I guess is the word.
Mm.
And so I guess my question from that was like, do we think there's any ways social media activism can be ethical slash sustainable? Those are kind of different words, but like same.
Oh, do we think? I
Do
think
you?
we could definitely start with education on media literacy. We could start there.
Oh, I had
Just
not even
general.
considered that. Yes.
Yeah, I've been seeing that word moving around a lot, especially with, so much happening in the world right now and
Yeah.
access to information. It's just like, okay, we live in a digital world. Let's teach these kids how to be digitally literate. Let's teach them how to Google, how to use Scholar, how to check a
Okay, but
source.
pause. Is
Mhm.
that even like digital literacy? Then it is just like literacy in general. Like, what these just skills that
We're
we were
just
taught in
adding
high
words,
school?
right?
Right? I'm like, is this what primary and secondary sources like you were taught? Like, Wikipedia is not really the
Mhm.
one because it's like a secondary, tertiary source. Like, you want to find the primary source. It doesn't the same concept exist.
Is
Like I
it the
watched a
same?
TikTok, someone said whatever. Yeah, but now I need
Mhm.
to Google if that statistic that person said in the TikTok was for real, or if it was just like a
Mm.
fun little soundbite that they wanted to create.
To
Like,
And even just general corroborating of sources, like, oh, someone said this here. Let me find someone else who said it, who's
who's
maybe just
also
as
said it?
credible or more. Like just those little things. And no, it literally is the same thing as just general literacy and research skills. And it does make you think, what are they teaching in schools? And also, like, a lot of parents, they don't know, not even just parents, just general people who are around any sort of child, I guess. Like they don't know these
Yeah.
things. And is there a future for social media activism? Look, it's here, it's not going anywhere. I
No.
just think that as the population grows and more people are using social media, the turnover rates are just going to be bigger with specific issues. Like
Yeah.
it's just, before, I think for a while people were talking about I don't know if you're familiar, but like with the Uyghur Muslims in China, which is a very
No, I
Yep, I
didn't
think it's
know.
very similar situation. Not very similar, actually, no, but like that was a trending topic for a while, which is just like and this is the thing, some would say there's a genocide and some would say there isn't,
Yeah.
depending on who you ask. And it's like
Yeah.
these issues, like these way these huge issues just get recycled so quickly. People
Yeah.
don't even have time to like, oh, I didn't even know that was happening, or I didn't even have time to like research or get to know about it. So and that yeah, that's a peril, like that quote said. That's not a good thing for like actually seeing change. um
Yeah.
I think you just got to end up with people who are a bit of jack of all trades. They know a little bit about a
That's
lot,
what I was gonna say. I
which
remember I
isn't
was
really
no, I was at a dinner party with someone. This was a few months back. And what were we talking about? We're talking about I don't know, they're really passionate about something in America because America is really good at centering all their problems and just
Mm.
themselves in general on the world stage. And so they were talking about something in America and they're like, oh my God, I just can't believe that happens. Or something that I can't remember, wherever it
Mm.
was in the world. I was like, that happens here in Australia. They're like, what? And I was like, have you not
What?
heard of like our offshore detention centers and like the
Mm.
inhumane conditions? I was like, what do you mean?
Mm.
Like,
Oh,
I love your
wow.
passion and your anger for that over there, but it's happening like right here.
It's happening right here too. That's what I
Right
mean.
here.
And that's the part that people don't want to contend with, which is like, and it's not even a dig as well at people who are passionate about issues. It's more like just this is the reality of it. It's like
Yeah.
we're so like anyone who's moved to this country, we can talk about all the bad things about Australia 100%. But like to be in a country like Australia where you're so shielded from the
Yes.
atrocities that your country is committing and the atrocities that are happening around the world, like most people in the world don't have that privilege,
No, they don't.
and like that's how we end up like Australia can be so America centric because we focus on America's problems because they have such a large population and they not control, but so much of our media is
Yeah.
influenced by them that you have so much luxury you don't even have to see everything that's happening on your own soil or just across that on another island.
Like literally not that
Yeah.
far. Just like a plane right away.
Like literally right there, like it's a boat right away. Like it's not far.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the other part where I think I love when people get passionate about that, but then I'm also like, I don't think not that one cause is more important than another. But I'm
Hmm.
like, there are actually like there are things like you don't have to feel helpless. Like
Oh,
there are atrocities that are happening near you that you can have a
hmm.
part to play in,
To
but you're
play.
not like aware of them. So like use this newfound knowledge that you have that the world is actually a big and bad and scary place,
Hmm.
and that like politicians aren't who you think they are, and or
Hmm.
like corporations and companies aren't who you think they are, and
Mm.
like research what it is that's happening here that you could also be
No,
a
I
part.
totally agree. I think we feel a sense of hopelessness because at least for a lot of people is that they don't have this is my observation, but they don't have a sense of meaning and purpose and
Oh yeah,
spiritual fulfillment in their own personal lives and whatever that looks like for you, however you define that. And then that can make you feel empty because even when I just think about myself, I wouldn't say because I'm very skeptical of things like whether it's like donating to charity or donating to a specific cause. If I can't see
oh
directly where my money is going, I want to see directly because
yeah,
like when you have that knowledge of how so many of these like NGOs and charities work, like people scam every day. You have people of
yeah.
World Vision driving limousines. It's like, how does that make sense? Where's the money going? So
Where's
like
the money
little things
going?
like so, I
Yeah,
try to focus in my own personal life and I guess the work that I do, finding meaning in those pockets. So you're actually recovering from that compassion fatigue because you're
yeah,
doing something in your life. And I think everyone at some capacity has a gift where they can give back in a way that also gives to themselves. And I think mine is my ability to have conversations with people and create spaces where people can come and heal or experience different things. And
yeah,
that's just as important because you're looking out for your community in that way,
yeah.
whether like you're a doctor or a teacher or whatever. But if you're kind of just, you're grinding on that 9 to 5 or like you're doing a job you hate and then you go home and you see all these miserable things, of course you're going to feel like I'm hopeless and I can't do anything because
Like, what's the
you're not
point in
even,
anything? Yeah,
yeah, because you're not giving back in just your regular life. And it's like, if you can't do that in your regular life, how are you going to do that for people halfway across the world?
that's what I'm saying. My mom used to have this thing. I used to hate it growing up, but I'm like, you know what? She was onto something. Where it's like generosity begins at home.
Oh, I was about to say, I was like, I know you Zims, I know you know this one.
Yeah,
Charity begins at
that's
home.
the one.
That's where it starts.
But honestly, it's such a great thing to have ingrained in you, though, because it's like, okay, before I go on social media and I try and make a whole bunch of other people feel trash about something that I have only just
Hmm.
recently been educated in, what am
Yeah,
I doing to actually like create tangible change in the areas that I can affect change and like be
that's it.
before I just get on my
Exactly.
soapbox?
No, before you go, it's like, because it's like we're not all gonna be MLK. We're not all gonna be like,
No,
these freedom fighters and revolutionaries. Most people are not gonna be that in their lives, but
no,
like, people remember generosity and kindness and like valuing your relationships and building stuff out of your relationships, that's going to make you feel so much more fulfilled than posting a black square or a
Yeah.
story.
Oh,
Not
I
the black
just
square getting all the hate today.
no, that deserves all the hate. That should have never been a thing. That just reminded me of another side to social media activism that I've also
Mm,
been thinking about is that and I think I was having a conversation with someone about this is so with the whole like charity at home kind of thing is that like
mm,
when I'm doing that I kind of think of it of like I know what I'm passionate about and what my niches are and where I feel like I can help, and I'm trusting that there are other people in other parts of the world or in other parts of the community who are passionate and are helping in the
mm,
areas that they can affect that I would never be able to reach or be as effective. And I think with social media activism is that sometimes we want people to speak on everything, like, oh, you were an
mm.
activist for XYZ, so now you must be an activist for this. But it's like
Yep.
sometimes they're not the best voice or medium to speak out on that topic. Like,
Mm.
let somebody else do it. Like,
Let somebody else have work. Give them a job, not me.
right? Like,
No,
how
that's
can
so
it be you
real.
covering every story?
Every story. And the thing is, as well, and this is, I think, where the critical thinking and nuance actually comes in because someone could be, actually, I know the perfect example for this one. And I think your listeners will probably hate hearing his name. But look, I take wisdom from who I can when I can. For example, like Jordan Peterson, right?
I knew that's who you were gonna say. I don't know why. I don't know why he's
You
so
know,
polarizing. I'm still trying to figure
I,
it out.
right. I think it's really interesting. And specifically, he will talk. I really love hearing him talk about things like psychology because he's a clinical psychologist by
Yeah, yeah.
profession. I like hearing him talk about psychology, human relationships, like intrinsic happiness, external, those types of things, because there's that academic background. He's speaking in a field that he believes to be knowledgeable and he is, has that degree. And, you
Yeah,
can sort of critique him in those areas because you're like, I think there's room for the conversation, right?
yeah.
But when I hear him talk about things like climate change, anyone, I would say, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's very
No.
evident he doesn't know what he's talking about. And I would never expect him to give the most well-formed, well-researched
Yeah,
explanation on when he says climate change isn't real. I'm
yeah.
like, okay, fair. It doesn't matter what you believe, but at the end of the day, we've got to stop looking for experts in people who aren't experts in that particular area. There are people who
Yes,
actually do climate change stuff for a living. It is their
yes.
job. Why do we have to find that validation in somebody who's not specifically in that field? And I feel like he's just a really good example because obviously he talks about other things
That
like
was a great
politics and
example
religion.
because I was gonna say I
Yeah.
think I've heard him speak about things, and I'm like, what?
What are you talking about? Yeah,
Literally.
exactly.
And I think there's things where I'm like, I shut up, and then other
Shut
things I'm
up.
like, oh, I guess you're not wrong.
I guess you're not wrong. Exactly.
I
And I think that's
begrudgingly am like, okay, you might be onto something,
you
whatever.
might be able to, right? And you don't want to admit it, but and I think it's also human nature that once we sort of start receiving our flowers for like a specific thing, we like,
Mm.
okay, I guess I can talk about anything. Like people want to hear me speak. That's human nature. Humans are very prideful. They've got big egos,
Yes.
and it takes a lot to like not be that person. And I think, yeah, that
And
is an
back to
ongoing
echo
problem.
chambers. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, what he's trained in and has like knows empirical data and evidence on, but also like his own personal stories and stuff would be psychology.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably well read on his opinion,
Exactly. And
on
we're
his
all a bit well read on
opinion
our opinion.
of climate change. Like, and that's fantastic. But also you would have looked for people who agree with you and who like so now then when you come out and you're like, well, since
Mhm.
I'm already on the platform with the microphone in my hand, climate change
And
is
I
not
know
real. Okay.
and I think it's really funny. I was having this conversation, I think, with my siblings recently. And I think it's funny how obviously if someone, I'm going to assume someone has a particular opinion about a certain thing, that probably shapes or informs how they think about other things. So,
Yes.
their opinions on things are sort of blanketed now. You're not going to find a lot of diversity in thought, which is why
Yes.
you have to go to different people, right? And we were talking about how you have large corporations that engage in whether it's like below the poverty line labor or like they
Mm.
pollute or they don't pay their workers, whatever thing. And in the same breath, we expect these same corporations to be politically correct, to be concerned about human rights. It's like they don't even pay their workers. Why
No.
does the finish line sort of now change of like, you know, people who do big and bad things, but on a small scale, we expect them to be understanding, compassionate human beings.
Or like the
It's,
other side where it's like, oh, because you did put up the flag or you did release some sort of press statement, it's like you did amazing. And it's like,
you did amazing. And
yeah,
it's
but
like,
like on the
no.
daily, their practices aren't humane, ethical, sustainable,
Yeah.
all of it. But because their
Really?
Twitter account released a statement, they are all, is it still, no, I'm sorry, X. Not Twitter, my
Exactly.
bad, X. My favorite is
My
when
bad.
people talk about it, they're like, X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm like, what a waste of money. Why did you even bother?
What a waste of money. At this point, I'm almost so frustrated. I just say X. Get rid of the
Right?
formally.
Oh, okay. So we will
Yeah.
like kind of officially wrap up on this. It was a thought I was having
Mhm.
a couple weeks ago, and so Trevor Noah has released. He's started his podcast. I love personally. I'm a
Oh
big
yeah.
Trevor Noah fan. I don't care what other people have to say. I'm a big Trevor Noah fan,
So fair.
and
So fair.
I think it was his first episode, and he was talking about how with the like moving landscape of like social media and politics and just like
Mhm.
society, um, people see other people's like political views as moral failings,
Ooh.
right? And I had to sit with that because I was like, okay, I can see how someone's like political views shouldn't be like I can't be like, oh, you're a bad person because you believe this.
Hmm.
But anything that I
Mm.
genuinely care about and disagree with someone politically has to
Mm.
do either with their awareness of like privilege in general or their privilege or how
Mm.
much they value a human life. And so then
Ooh,
I'm like,
yeah.
I am happy enough to say that the things that I disagree with people on politically to me are moral failings. And I was like, maybe that's an unpopular opinion. What are you thinking?
No, I think it really depends on the opinion, and what the opinion is formed by. I think on a surface level, I don't think people's political opinions are moral failings. I think that as long as your opinion, because I think everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Opinions
Yes.
are almost like intrusive thoughts that are a bit more well thought out. Sometimes it's like you just have an
Actual.
opinion. Sometimes you just have an opinion on something and you're like, I haven't really thought about this deeply, but I know how I feel about it. Okay. Like, I know
Yeah,
how I
actual,
feel.
actual.
And you're like, I don't really need more information but some opinions, when you are given more information, you can change your mind. But some opinions that just don't happen. You
Yeah,
know, I think it's all about, for me, I kind of go back to, is my opinion infringing on the autonomy of another person? If not, personally, I feel like I'm entitled to it as much as possible. I say
right.
because
Yes.
I'll use it as such a black and white example. Obviously, it doesn't really. Actually, this is probably a terrible example, but it's the one I'm going to use now because
Go,
it's
I'm
the one
ready.
that's like, but it's actually terrible. Like, say someone, you have somebody who they particularly don't like Africans for whatever reason.
Yeah,
That's their opinion.
yeah.
Um, but if they start saying things like, no, I don't think Africans should be in school with my children, that's an
That's
opinion that
yeah.
is infringing on the movements of other people. So
Yeah.
that's when we now have to challenge that opinion. But if they're like, yeah, I don't really want my kid going to school with other Africans, but it's fine. Like, we move,
But it is what it
and
is. Yeah.
then now we're probably having more conversations around, okay, what are they telling their child at home?
Yeah.
But again, because I don't believe in policing language and policing thought, because when you do that, you end up with like tyrannical states. You
I was
should
gonna
not
say
police.
that's how we got Trump, isn't it? Because
That's how you get
everyone
Trump.
thought one way, and then Trump
Yeah,
came out with like what everyone thought was like so radical, and it's like, oh my goodness, enough
yes,
people agree with him
exactly.
that they've now voted him in. It's like
Because we make
everything
certain
was politically
ideas and
correct.
thoughts like, yeah, exactly, we make certain
Yeah.
ideas and thoughts like bad to have. It's a moral failing. It becomes
Yeah.
like, this is the social standard now, so keep that opinion and thought to
Yeah.
yourself, because if you do, be prosecuted. But we don't even have time to get into cancel culture right now. But basically, I do think,
Yes.
but I do think that, yeah, like, as long as it's not infringing on another person, for the most part, I think you're entitled to whatever cuckoo opinion that you have. But some opinions are moral failings for sure. Some
That's
are.
that was my thing when I thought about it. I was like, theoretically,
Mhm.
yeah, I agree with you. But when I think of the things that I don't agree with people on politically. There are things where I'm like, why wouldn't you want another human being to have that?
Exactly. And that's when we start to question, like, okay, that one is we have to like because it goes back to protecting certain rights and freedoms, which is why you
Yeah.
can't let I don't remember what I was saying, but yeah, agreed.
Yes. In conclusion, yes, I love it. Okay. The official ending, I always ask what, and
Mhm.
it can be in general. You can relate it to this topic or in general.
Yeah.
What is one thing you would want that you think people should know just about life, the world, people? Just one thing you
One
think
thing that
everyone should know.
I think everyone should know about the world, about themselves. Look, honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is because this is something that I've been really focusing a lot for myself, is the set boundary, I guess actually it relates to social media. Because you should be conscious of what you're putting into your body, whether that's and I mean this in every aspect of life. I think
Yeah.
we live in a society where we have so much access to a lot of things, and we eat a lot of stuff, we inject a lot of stuff, whatever it is, into our bodies, and we don't think about the repercussions of that later. But it's the same with the content we engage in as well. I
Yeah.
think it's really important and beautiful to want to be knowledgeable on a topic, especially ones as heavy as conflicts happening around the world. But set boundaries about how much information you're taking in, because
Yeah.
it's not good for your mental, it's not good for your brain. There was a time in human civilization where all we knew was like the 100 people in our tribe,
And
and in a
yeah,
weird
exactly.
and in a weird way, our brains are actually still wired like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of the ways in which we live now are very counterintuitive to how our natural body actually functions.
Yeah.
So yeah, just being more mindful about those things. I think people would be a lot happier if they were.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I think the unfollow button, guys, the unfollow button or like blocking stuff on TikTok
Oh,
is so important. I do
so
this thing
important.
where like on like a shallow level where every
Mm,
now and again, like every few months, I will like go through the people I follow on Instagram and I'll unfollow people
yeah.
whose content I don't interact with, or I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I just don't really care anymore.
I just don't really care, or not feeling
Yeah, or
it.
like even real life people, I will think to myself, if I see your stuff and I think, ugh,
Mm.
or I'm following you because I just love to hate on your content, I am unfollowing because that is not
I'm
good
a
for
one.
anyone involved. I'm like,
It's not.
both need to not be in this situation. Like,
Oh, 100%. It's like this
no.
is not the space that we should be in. It's not a space
Yeah.
that we should encourage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so real.
Yes. So,
Do a social media cleanse, detox people.
oh yeah.
Um,
I do that
mm,
at the start of the year, definitely. And then like throughout the year as it happens, and people are always like, oh my God, like what happened? I'm like, sometimes you just need to not know what
yeah.
everyone's doing all the time or update
Oh,
everyone. Like I just need to be disconnected. And it
no,
also
it's
helps. Yeah, sorry, go.
but I was sorry, I was gonna say it's bad enough that we have these phones that make us accessible to everyone 24/7 and people
Yeah,
accessible to us 24/7. I'm like, please, just because I have my phone on me, just because you can text me, doesn't mean I'm gonna reply just
um,
like that because
right. I will get back to
yeah,
you when I get back to you. And that's how I
that's
feel.
it.
I feel like it makes me more intentional with my relationships because a
Mm,
lot of my like family and friendships are
yeah.
currently long distance. So social media is like, oh, that's fun because I can see like what you post or if
Mm,
you send me a photo or whatever. But then when that gets cut off, I now have to intentionally be like, yo, how you been? What you get up to this week? Ask more
yeah.
intentional questions on the phone or like if we're texting
Mm.
or whatever the case may be. Whereas on social media, kind of like you can be lazy because you're like, oh,
You
I
can
saw
be
what you had for lunch.
lazy.
Like I was there with you, basically.
And And everyone who uses social media knows that that's not really a reflection of the reality. So why do
Exactly.
we use it as the
Ugh.
standard for what people are up to? This is not
Actual,
true.
my pet peeve to this day, oh my God, um, was when there was a point in time, I think it was during, no, it was just after lockdowns.
Mm,
And my friends and I were like, oh, we're just gonna make the most of our 20s because at this point COVID has taken enough. So we'd go to like cafes or whatever, or like we'd go on like little girls' trips, whatever.
mm.
And people would be like to me, when do you ever work? Which was like, I was like, they're like 15-second snippets. And there's like, on a good day, maybe like 10 of them. There's like 24 hours in a day. What do you mean, when do I work? Like, I'm
Literally,
like,
and
what?
you're only seeing like a 15-minute snippet of me showing my lunch. Like,
Oh, what do you mean? And then what made it worse was one of the girls used to work in the same hospital as me. And
mm,
like this girl would see me at work basically almost every day. And then I'd post on social media, she'd be like, and I'm like, what? You literally see me at work. Did it
Phoebe.
occur to you? And I was doing shift work at this time. So I'm
Mhm.
like, if I'm starting work at 3 p.m., I have the whole morning to do something.
I No, it's such a reflection on how a lot of people actually live their lives. It's such a reflection when people say that. It's like, damn, you're so invested in the fact that what you've seen on my social medias is not matching up with this reality because you think they're supposed to be the same because for you it's the same thing.
Yeah. I
I think
was
it's
like,
like it's a form of projection, I guess. Yeah.
yes,
Mm,
yes.
mm,
And
mhm.
on that note,
And on
thank
that
you for coming on the
note,
podcast. I love
oh my
this.
gosh, thank you for having me. I feel like I would love to come back again because there's
Yes.
way too many things we could have talked about today that I'm like,
I
oh,
was
we don't
gonna
have
say, I
time.
was like, when you said cancel culture, I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about cancel culture.
And it's never too late to talk about cancel culture. Okay, there's always something to say about
There's always
cancel
someone being
culture.
canceled when we book it in when you're in Melbourne. What
No,
in Jan?
girl, yeah, January, January.
We
Yeah,
will
please.
get that done because there's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot.
Before we officially end, tell the people
Yes.
where they can find you. Also, if you're in Brisbane, how often do you put on events? I feel like you've been quite regular this year. Tell the people your
This
Instagram, where they can find you, what's coming up next. Go.
So where people can find you. So you can find me on Instagram, my business account, Radical Premieres, or you can find me on my personal. It's Tara Sai. You can also find me on Twitter, now known as X,
For-
where I mainly talk about my everyday musings and anime at Misha Princess. Um, and what's coming up this year? So this year was a big event year. We were doing basically events like every 2 to 3 months.
you
But
were.
next year I'm actually no, I was busy. But this year I am officially on coming next year, sorry. Bit of a hiatus. I'm taking a bit of a break. But I will be continuing to work with another creative on a project we have called Black Ink, where we have just very exciting. We have creators
Yes.
come to the space. We do a bit of open mic, bit of performances, and a lot of conversational stuff. So we get people in groups to talk about a lot of these things that we just talked about right now on the podcast. So yeah, it's going to be really fun. And we'll be doing those like every 2 to 3 months next year. So it's
Next
like a
year. Yeah.
regular thing.
So guys, look
Yeah,
out for that. Do you
look
know
out
what
for
was
it.
funny? At the start of the year, I was like, I had put it in my notes. I was like, I really want to put on a debate style event. Because I was like, I feel like what's lacking in the Melbourne scene is like there's a lot of panels. I love
Hmm.
that. That's great. And I feel like people have a lot to say on stuff on social media, but I want like old school debate style, like you get the topic, you research. Because I used to be in a
Yes.
debate team in primary school. I feel like I'm
Period.
very aligned with my brand. Anyway,
Speak.
I was like, I want people to do that. Literally, like a
Mhm.
month or two later, you announce your debate event.
Yes, I did
And
do
I
a
was
debate.
like, if anyone were to do it, it would be her.
And
I'm not
it
even.
was on it was so good. It was so, so good. You need to do that. You have to put on a debate style event because I think yeah, bringing back put in the effort to actually formulate your argument. Don't just send
That's
me a
my
link.
thing. On social media, you can be like, oh, this person talks about this really well.
Mhm.
No, I want you to put your opinion for or against with the statistics. I want a nicely
Mhm.
laid out essay that you can present.
Yes. I think
Critical
that's
thinkers are coming
exactly what
back.
we need. No, they're coming back. I think you're like it's a shift, right? People are getting tired of not enough nuance and too much superficialness in the conversations. Like
Yeah.
they're like, let's really get to the crux of it. But the thing is, these these debates now conversations are tough to have because I think they can hurt a lot of feelings.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the
Yes.
truth. I won't elaborate on that anymore.
No, I agree. I think it's depending on the topic, it's that thing of like, for you it could be like an intellectual exercise, and for the other person it's like their reality and they're like fighting their humanity in this debate with you.
Exactly.
So
That's
no,
it.
I agree. But yes, oh, I'm done with
100%.
like a little debate. Actually, that's one of the reasons I didn't do it, because I hadn't done the podcast yet and I really wanted it to be under the branding of the
Oh,
podcast.
100% you should do it that way. you should do it that way.
For
Yes.
2024. We'll talk. We will talk in person. But yes,
We will
okay, podcast
talk.
is officially done.
Thank you. Bye.